Thank you for having me here with you all today. I was invited to come and talk about district-based elections and how we got here, why we're doing it, and all of that stuff. So I'll just spend just a few minutes providing a high-level overview of how Fremont got to this place where we're transitioning to district elections. So, the California Voting Rights Act expands upon the Federal Voting Rights Act, making it easier for groups to prove that their votes are being diluted by at-large elections. So here in California, minority groups can prove that they're being disenfranchised by, it doesn't take much basically to suggest or prove that they're being disenfranchised by by at-large elections. So basically, unlike the federal Voting Rights Acts, which says, you have to prove that a particular geographic area is being disenfranchised, the California Voter Rights Act does not say that. Basically, it just makes it easier for minority voters to sue local governments. In essence, it's really eliminating at-large elections all throughout the state of California. As you can see, pre-passage of the California Voters' Rights Act, only 29 California cities held district-based elections, and most of those were large cities that are larger in size. Post 2002, the passage of the CVRA, at least 74 cities will be by district, and that number has grown since the development of this slide. But school districts are being impacted, counties are being impacted, and many other areas. So basically, with Fremont's transition to district elections, we received a letter in February of 2017 from an attorney based out of Southern California suggesting that Fremont's at-large system was racially polarizing. So naturally, we kind of got all of our subject matter experts together and said, what does this mean? What do we need to do here? And what we learned was, number one, we revisited the CVRA, which again, doesn't require much to prove that at-large elections are racially polarizing. But we wanted to get some information about how other cities who had received such letters were impacted as well. Basically, the letter said your election system is racially polarizing, and if you don't transition to district-based elections, we're going to sue you, pretty much. So we wanted to know what other cities and counties and districts who had been faced with this did. Some cities said, we're going to fight this. We don't feel like we have a problem here. And most all of those cities lost. And what we learned was that, the settlements that they wound up entering in, were, $4 million, $2 million. I mean, just ridiculous amounts of money to say that, there wasn't a problem and then to lose. So we had 90 days to act on this letter, and that's, based on state and federal law. So in 90 days, we had to file a resolution of intent saying that, yes, we plan to transition to district elections. And then we had to hold at least 5 public hearings to gather community input and, really explain what was happening. In the first 2 public hearings, we heard a lot from the community about what they'd be looking for in district-based elections in terms of how the districts were organized and what they wanted the city council to consider. And then after that second public hearing, our demographer took that feedback and developed several map alternatives that drew the various boundaries that we heard from the community. And then in the next few public hearings, there was more community input, but the city council decided on, how many districts. This is just more information about the public hearing process, but how many districts and what the boundaries should be and so forth. some of the things that we were legally required to consider with regard to drawing the boundaries were communities of interest. So, for example, school attendance areas, city borders, languages, areas around parks and other landmarks. But the districts had to be contiguous. They had to have visible, natural, man-made boundaries. They needed to include respect for past voter selections, and they needed to plan for growth as well. And most importantly, they needed to be, the population of each district needed to be equitable. So in our 6 districts, there's, each of the 6 districts has roughly the same number of voters in it. We talked a little bit about the settlements. Again, cities like Palmdale, Modesto, Anaheim. Anaheim spent $1 million fighting this. Palmdale spent $4.5 million saying, hey, we don't have a problem here. So we thought that, it'd be wise for Fremont to move forward with district elections. And another benefit of district elections is that they tend to generate more community involvement and input, and the districts, the residents in the districts feels like they have better and more accessible representation when they're represented by a council member in the district. This here just is shows what the boundaries are and what the maps are. The district maps were drafted. We had 2 additional public hearings, and then finally at the public hearing on June 13th, the City Council adopted an ordinance and established district-based elections based on this map here. So another thing that had to occur during the public outreach process is, we expanded from 5 council members to 7, which includes the mayor, who will continue to be elected at large. But another thing that had to be done during the public hearing process, and this happened at the final meeting on June 13th, was selection of the map, determination of which seats would be up for election in 2018, which seats would be open for election in 2020, and then which seat that would be up for election in 2018 would be for a 2-year term rather than a 4-year term. And the point of that was so that we would continue to have a staggered council. So during each election, there would be 3 council members being selected. So that's how we got here. This is what it is. We have districts 1, 2, 3, and 4 up for election in November, and we see some of the candidates represented here this evening. And District 1 will be for a 2-year term, and then that seat will be up for election again in 2020, along with Districts 5 and District 6. Here's your slate of candidates for 2018. 14 candidates pulled papers during the open season for that. And cast your vote. Here's our vote by mail ballot box, which is in front of City Hall. I've seen a lot of people walking around looking for it, but it's right there in front of City Hall between buildings A and B.
We're going to start with Ms. Kang for your opening statement. 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Teresa Kang. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm running for Fremont City Council District 1. And District 1 has been waiting for this day for a long time. We were promised a community center 30 years ago, then 12 years ago, and still nothing now. We have been long neglected, and we need services closer by us, especially for our seniors and our youth. Our parks are not being maintained enough because it's too far from Lake Elizabeth. Our tennis courts are getting the nets retired from the tennis courts in South Fremont. It's no wonder that we're starting to feel that we're not as important as the other districts. I grew up in the Fremont area and lived in District 1 for 15 years. My life is tightly needed in District 1 because I live and work in District 1 with a small business that serves hundreds of customers every day. I'm the only candidate in District 1 that has kids in the school district now. I understand the challenges facing small business owners, as well as the overcrowding issue with the schools. 2 out of 3 cars in Fremont are cut through traffic. We need to modernize our traffic signal system so it doesn't make the traffic worse. Fremont is a diverse community, and we celebrate our unique cultures we have here. I come from a multiracial family, and I would like to be the bridge between different ethnic groups. My husband is a Marine veteran who served behind enemy lines in the Persian Gulf War. We have been blessed by this country, and we are giving back with any opportunity we are given. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm going to remind you again to please hold your applause or any other comments so that we can get through this quickly. Mr. Oropeza, would you, I should have said this earlier, but would you please introduce yourself and then start on your opening statement? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Oropeza, and I'm running for Fremont City Council District 1. So a little bit about me. I work as a project engineer for the Alameda County Water District, and my lovely wife works as a kindergarten teacher. We're both heavily invested in the community, and we're looking to make Fremont our future forever home. As to why I decided to run for Fremont City Council, I decided to run because I wanted to make a positive impact on the city and focus on the positives going forward as opposed to the negatives. I think I would bring a unique perspective as a civil engineer. Some of our biggest challenges right now are directly correlated with traffic, overdevelopment, overcrowded schools, and just in general infrastructure. And I think that my technical background would allow me to be able to come in on day one and be able to get a head start running. I'm familiar with the CEQA process. I'm familiar with writing staff reports. I've been on the other side. I've done presentations before board members and council members. And I think that experience would allow me to be an effective council member. The top 3 priorities that I would like to address as a council member would be traffic congestion, overdevelopment, and then public safety. I know that public safety, it may not seem like it's a significant issue, but I think that it's isolated to certain areas that most of the residents are not always privy to. And so part of my work, I was able to get to know the city, not just the common parts of the city, but I was also able to get to know the creeks and areas that most residents don't typically visit. So I would welcome your support, and thank you for your time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chandu Siramdas, running for City Council from District 1 in Fremont. I have a bachelor's in economics, a master's in political science, and I even have a law degree, but not practicing. I'm a realtor, and also I worked as a leasing consultant, so I have an experience, about 18 years of experience. And I'm a community leader, serving as a community leader for various nonprofit organizations for the last 15 years. And I have been living in Fremont for the last 20 years and living in District 1 for 17 years. I'm a mother of 2 sons. Both my children are proud products of FUSD public school system, studied from K to 12. They both now pursuing robotic engineering. My husband is a senior executive with a top-tier technology company. Why I'm running? Over 2 decades of my living in Fremont gave me opportunities to experience and expose to the grassroots level of issues. I have found a few aspects of our district to be lacking. I have considered many issues that we citizens may find concerning. I have filtered through them to come down to 4 main issues that I, as your future council member, may influence. Number 1, traffic congestion. Number 2, affordable housing. Number 3, safety and protection, and local jobs. Although I may be new to politics, but I am not new to community service. I have experience of 15 plus years. And I have been a member of Telangana Cultural Association, started as a volunteer, and event director, vice president, president, and now serving as a chairperson. And we also founded a temple in San Ramon. And also, I'm a...
Thank you. Just as a reminder for the candidates, KK is our timekeeper today, and she will hold up a 30-second and then a stop. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. I'm Rick Jones, and I am running for a second and final term on the City Council. I've been a resident here in Fremont for nearly 40 years, and my wife's family have been lifelong residents back to the early 1900s. I have dedicated all of those years living here in community service, first as a police officer, a school resource officer, a teacher, a planning commissioner, a coach, and now as a council member. My wife and I volunteer with SAVE, the domestic violence organization here. We're also members of Niles Rotary. We give back to our community doing projects with schools and city parks and those kinds of things. And our fundraiser last year raised about $85,000 for our nonprofits here in Fremont. We love to attend all the events here in the city and support our nonprofits and our small businesses. And to me, that's the best part of the job, is getting out and being able to meet our residents who are involved in community service. So I have three priorities that I would like to focus on, and that's, much like the others, affordable housing, homelessness, and infrastructure improvement. So the Bay Area is in desperate need of housing, but especially affordable housing for our lower income residents and our senior population. We're losing an entire generation of young people who can't afford a place of their own, as well as a growing senior population that is looking to downsize. We need to focus on higher density housing near our transit areas like BART, ACE, and AC Transit, and invest in infrastructure for our public transit here in South County. Over the last 4 years, development has generated a significant amount of funding for affordable housing, resulting in over 1,500 units currently under construction or in the pipeline. In this booming economy, we need to focus on holding our tech companies responsible that are bringing in thousands of new jobs, making them responsible for either funding new housing or actually providing the new housing, because cities simply cannot afford to do it. To help preserve our neighborhood integrity, I also introduced an ordinance against the mega houses that a lot of people were complaining about. So housing is always our number one issue. The Bay Area is slated to grow by 1 million people over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Mr. Bonacorsi?
Good evening. Yes, I'm David Bonacorsi. I'm currently serving on the council and serving in the area for District 3. First, I want to thank the Fremont Chamber of Commerce, the Mission San Jose Chamber of Commerce, Irvington Business Association, and the Centerville Business and Community Association for organizing it. It's difficult to organize these forums, and you're doing a great public service for allowing us to all express our views this evening. I'm a lifelong Fremont resident who attended our public schools, and since January, as your District 3 council member, I've been walking the streets from Parkmont to 28 Palms. And let's describe the district, which is District 3. We're the downtown district. It's really between Maury and Stevenson. It includes Kennedy High School, Washington High School, Centerville, Walters, Holy Spirit, all of Parkmont, Sundale, 28 Palms. So that's really and our downtown. So where we have the Fremont Street Eats and the Festival of the Arts, when we're having fun at the Chamber, we're in District 3. My priorities are reducing and to improve the quality of life. We're reducing traffic and implementing Fremont's Vision Zero because 2 out of 3 of our commuters are from out of the city. And so as we reduce fatalities on a road, we reduce out-of-town traffic and make it safer and more accommodating for our local residents. We need to protect our neighborhoods. I've been leading the charge to eliminate McMansions with an ordinance that I introduced, and also to preserve our past, like the Cloverleaf Family Bowl. And again, as a referral, I led the council in making it a historic legacy landmark. We also need to enhance public safety, and I'm proud to have the support of our firefighters and our Fremont police that are here this evening for fully funding public safety and for strengthening our public, city, school, and partnerships. And I serve on the liaison committee with the school district, proud of my support from our local teachers and from CSEA, and I look forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton?
Good evening. My name is Robert Dalton. I'm running for the council seat in District 4. I am a single father. I live in the historic district of Niles in District 4. What brought me to this situation was a neighbor tapped me on my shoulder and told me about a development that was happening in downtown Niles. It's known as the Niles Gateway. Now, the historic district has always lent itself to my particular business. I'm a marketing consultant and an artist, and the threat of this development to my district, to my part of the district, my neighborhood, overwhelmed myself and my neighbors to the point where we started going to all the council meetings revolving around this issue. We eventually had to sue the city for an environmental impact report on that project. We won that suit. We won the appeal that was filed by the developer, and the fight for our historic district there goes on. It's my belief that overdevelopment of Niles puts the business opportunities that drive downtown Niles at risk. And in my walking through the district, I've seen that the overdevelopment of Fremont generally has put the schools, the roads, our infrastructure, and business all throughout Fremont at risk. And so I'm running in order to get traffic under control, in order to stop overdevelopment in our district and try and bring some sanity to it, to ensure neighborhood integrity, and to keep my neighborhood and the rest of Fremont, the Fremont that we love so well. So I anticipate your support, and I thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Shao.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yan Xiao. I'm currently the president of Fremont Unified School District, and I'm also the candidate for District 4, covering Mission Valley Elementary, Chatball Elementary, Gomes Elementary, Durham Elementary, Vallejo Mill Elementary, and Niles Elementary. I'm so thankful to the organizers for letting me sit in my seat, which is where I preside the school board meetings twice a month. And when I look down from here, I not only see room for people, I also see all the faces of our students around the room. If you can take a moment to just look around, because these pictures of the faces of the students always remind me that I need to put our student first. That's exactly what I did over the last 4 years. While here, I voted for the resolution against overdevelopment of the city of Fremont that would cause overcrowdedness of our schools. I also reviewed projects for our school renovation so that our Measure E bond money can be spent wisely, and the project so far has been on time and within budget. I also approved funding for MVRP programs so that our students can pick up skills to work with the local business community and when they become the workforce in the city of Fremont. I also listened to students and parents and teachers and prolong our meetings so that I can make decisions for them to their best interest. Right now, Fremont Unified School District is the receiving end of still the overdevelopment, and that's why I'm running so that I can help the city to solve the problems of traffic, affordable housing for teachers, and school overcrowdedness.
Thank you, Mr. Shao. Mr. Shah.
My name is Justin Shaw. I'm a startup co-founder and one of 2 fellows selected by the Oakland City Attorney's Office. My startup has been since taken a back burner, and when I'm at the Oakland City Attorney's Office, I assist in issues such as land use and planning. On the campaign trail, my opponents say I'm too young. I have no political experience. Let me address that. Many issues come before the city council, and no council member will know everything. The best representatives, in my opinion, are those who can research, analyze, and execute comprehensive solutions with intelligence and with resident input to satisfy voters' desires. My top 3 selling points are: 1, I'm young, independent, and genuinely for residents. 2, I am not a pushover. 3, I'm a team player, creative and full of new ideas. My number 1 issue is traffic congestion. I will take a tough stance against developers. Recently, I used my legal expertise to tell the city that they are obligated under the law to take Niles resident anecdotes into account as fact-based evidence. But Fremont deals with many issues, not just development. I offer a comprehensive approach. For example, I've spoken to our public works director, chief technology officer, and police chief about ways to leverage the IT department's GIS system overlay technology to reduce bottlenecks, decrease burdens on our police force, and increase citizen access to underutilized Fremont services. If elected, I commit to spearheading innovative and comprehensive solutions. And when I make a commitment, I give it my 100%. I promise to work for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler?
Thank you, and thank you, Chamber, for hosting this, and everybody for coming out during your dinner hour. I'm running because I want to continue my public service. I don't have any further ambitions in political arena besides being the best council member I can be. I've lived in this city for 32 years, and I love this city. I think it's a great city. I think it can be better. I spent 45 years of my life in public service, in law enforcement, 3 different agencies, the last 21 years as chief of police here in the city of Fremont. My community service involves, and is not limited to, but it involves 24-year member of the Niles, of the SAVE board, which Rick talked about, the domestic violence sheltering program that we have in Fremont. I'm a 32-year member of and past president of the Niles Rotary Club and the work that we do in the community. I owned a small business in Niles for 15 years with my wife, and we closed that in 2017. I'm a 5-year and past president of Niles Main Street Association, which puts on all the major events in the Niles district. I was a 1.5 years so far on the planning commission. I'm a 3-year member of the Bond Oversight Committee for Washington Township Hospital. I'm also a graduate of the first leadership course that was put on by the Chamber before KK and everybody at the Chamber. And I also volunteer for HERS, the Breast Cancer Foundation, which my wife is the executive director. And again, thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you. And Ms. Watanuki?
Thank you all for coming out this evening. I'm Debbie Watanuki, and I'm running for Fremont City Council, District 4. Fremont really offers an excellent quality of life with really vibrant communities, great schools, and enthusiastic civil engagement. But we face challenges. I will prioritize comprehensive solutions to our traffic congestion, our housing affordability, or the lack of it, homelessness, and public safety problems with a focus on equity and fairness. Using innovative, sustainable city planning, I know I will pursue attainable housing options, workforce housing, options for veterans, seniors, and our children as they begin their careers. We must have housing options for all economic levels. A home is a basic right. Great neighborhoods really make a great city, and I will promote inclusion, community policing, supporting our local businesses, the cultural arts and music, and training for city staff to better serve and protect all in our diverse city. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the first question, and we're going to start in District 2. So, as a chamber, we realize it's critical to be accessible and part of the community. And because of that, we believe it's important that as a council member, you be very involved. So can you list your local events, causes, associations that impact daily life here in Fremont? Now, I realize that many of you already listed that for us. If there's anything you'd like to add to that, that would be fine. If you would like to pass on that question, we understand.
How much time do you have?
You have 1 minute.
I'm one of the few council members that actually has the luxury of being retired after a long career in the city of Fremont. And so I attend just about all of the events that go on here, a number of ribbon cuttings, grand openings. We've had the Boldly Me Walk, the Heart Race, the Drivers for Survivors events, all of the fundraisers that we try and support, not only through my membership in Niles Rotary, but my wife and I attend all of these events and try and do as much as we can to support our community. To me, the best part about the job, again, is getting out and meeting all of the residents of our city. We are such a diverse city. I get to meet people from all over the world, and I get to try food from all over the world. So it's a great job.
Thank you. Mr. Bonacorsi.
I love Fremont. I've devoted my 30 years as an adult to community service in this community. Here I am in the school board room. I spent many years helping our school district as the past president of the Fremont Education Foundation. And during my 9 years on the board there as board president, I led the Guy Emanuel Sports Fund, and we raised over $100,000 for at-risk youth so they could participate in after-school sports. In 2002, I was the co-chair of the Measure B, which preceded Measure E, which was a $157.2 million funded bond for our school facilities. I have served for 10 years on the Planning Commission, and I never missed one meeting. I am very proud of my activities. Government Affairs Committee for the Fremont Chamber. We're going to run out of time, but I'm also was the chair of the former redevelopment agency that former Mayor Morrison appointed when we were devolving our redevelopment in Fremont. I love the public service that I've done. My service on the council is a continuation of my 30 years of loving devotion to the community I love.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton.
So I spoke earlier about the organization that we put together to raise money and hire an attorney to sue the city to create a safer environment in the Niles Gateway. That was known as the Protect Niles organization. It's been running for 4 years now. We raised about $30,000 and put on all kinds of community events to make that happen. I also am a founding member of Niles for Environmentally Safe Trains. We marshaled a community response to the ACE Forward proposal to bring large freight trains, coal and oil laden, through the canyon and through District 4, taking our responses all the way to the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. I've also, as a father of a child in the elementary school system in Niles, spent a lot of time working with the students there as an art teacher.
Mr. Shao.
Being a school board trustee takes a lot of energy. I constantly find myself having coffee with all stakeholders, answering emails all into the midnight. But apart from my duty as the school board member, I also serve as a board member of Citizens for Better Community, aka CBC. We do try to develop the leadership for our young students during summer and run our summer intern programs. I'm also the board member of Asian Pacific Island American Political Affairs, aka PAPA East Bay. And we work hard in the Asian community, try to register voters. I also serve as a volunteer for Fremont Unified Student Store, aka FUS, to raise money for Fremont Unified School District. We do annual talent shows and summer programs for that.
Thank you. Mr. Shah.
Yeah, so I am involved with DECA. This is a business club in both Washington High School and MSJ. I'm a proud alumni and a volunteer for conferences. I am also a lead volunteer for the CIO Scholarship Fund, and overall, I've been active since 2014, and we since then have raised about $500,000 for Ohlone College students and other community college students who are interested in transferring to a four-year university for careers in information technology. I also am a member of the Silicon Valley Indian Lions Club, and I have helped create a GoFundMe called San Francisco Bay Area for Kerala Flood Relief. I'm also an adjunct professor at Ohlone College. And as a participant, I'm very involved in women's issues. I have participated in the Save Gala as a 5K. I've hers as a 5K runner, and also I attended the Candlelight Vigil in Palo Alto for Dr. Christine Ford with other Fremont residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier some of the community involvement I'm with. To take that a little further, I do support the Fremont Ed Foundation. I attend their gala every year with my wife. The Ohlone College Foundation, the Save Gala, the HERS Gala, Niles Rotary annual fundraising efforts that we do. Also volunteer with Save besides being a board member. We get donations from Costco every day. My day is Saturday to pick up and deliver. Also support the Newark League of Volunteers and Washington Township Hospital Top Hat event. So I keep myself busy since I retired. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watanuki.
I've been active, volunteering, and committing my time to the community over the years. I am currently a board member for Life Elder Care that provides services to our aging population. I'm serve as pro bono to the Hopkins Band and Orchestra boosters. I participated in Leadership Fremont, and our project dealt with refurbishing the kitchen for abode services. I also was a speaker at the Families Belong Together rally, talking about my own family history and their internment during World War II, and really fighting for and advocating for a change in the immigration policies of our country. There are other things, but that's okay. I think I'm going to get the stop sign.
Right now. Thank you. We're going to start in District 3 this time. Mr. Bonacorsi. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's what happens when I start in the middle. Ms. King, please.
Yes. So I want to thank the chambers again for tonight's forum. And first, I want to apologize for having to leave after this question because I have a fundraising dinner for me that's been postponed a couple times, so I need to head over there after this question. But I have been involved in community service for the last 20 years. I was organizing free summer camps for kids. I was a youth counselor for junior high and high school kids. One of my students actually got married a couple months ago, so I'm starting to feel old a little bit. And so I'm also a sponsor for SAFE, organization against domestic violence. At my restaurant, we are actively sponsoring fundraisers for schools around us each year and helping them raise thousands of dollars each year. And I'm also active in the PTA.
Thank you. Mr. Oropeza.
So my volunteer activities include, I often volunteer for a lot of the activities that we do at work, a lot of water outreach programs, groundwater awareness day, a day without water. And then in addition to that, I volunteer at my wife's school sometimes doing STEAM Week and other activities. And then throughout college, I used to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. And that pretty much sums it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Siramdas.
Siramdas.
I'm a member of Rotary Club in Fremont. We are serving locally through hands-on projects as well as raising money for local and international development projects. And I also run the shows, and I raised $45K for one charity program. And I also did so many, I raised many thousands of dollars for charity programs for various nonprofit organizations. And I have worked on community and women issues. I will be accessible, transparent, and accountable in my role as city council member. So I also supported children in PTA. So that's how I work for many of the nonprofit organizations and PTA, and raised thousands of dollars for charity programs.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we are going to go to District 3. And Mr. Bonacorsi, we're going to start with you. And this is really, we're going to jump right into the whole issue about housing. And we've got several questions from the audience. So I am going to try to, so bear with me while I try to boil this in to a question, albeit it's going to be a compound question. So developers are needed to build, among other things, affordable housing. Do you think there's a bias against market rate housing and business development in favor of below market development? And let me add on that if I can. Most of us agree affordable housing is a priority. However, this seems to have taken a back seat. What is being done to strengthen that issue? another question, tremendous amount of development of residential units in Fremont. What is your plan to address this issue? And then there is interest in knowing about bridging or balancing the increased building of residential between historical communities and modern communities. So it's a pretty broad field there to answer. So pretty much the question is housing. Talk about it.
This is a very complex issue, and it is subject to people that demagogue it and give us false choices. First of all, we have a general plan, which was updated in 2011, that extends to 2030, that really guides the kind of development that we have. We frankly don't have a bias against affordable housing or bias against market rate housing for affordable housing. The market rate housing has tended to take care of itself because of the economic need. The demand for housing is such that we have a huge jobs to housing imbalance. We need to do more in affordable housing. What I would propose is some state legislation that would require more below market rate housing from our apartment construction developers closer to transit so that we meet our goals, because we are far short. The state has also intervened by mandating certain affordable housing development because we haven't met our targets, and witness what's happening in Cupertino with Valco with some below market rate housing that's going in as a matter of right without a planning commission or city council meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
Do I get 30
Bonaccorsi.
seconds rebuttal? No.
We'll address that. We have to get through their
Okay.
candidates first. Mr. Dalton.
Yes. So, my experience talking to people in Fremont is that we need to call for a moratorium on new building permits for above market rate housing. Full stop. That we need to address our low end RENA numbers on the affordable end of the scale exclusively for a while. And if that means just stopping the development, drawing back and readdressing the general plan in order to make sense of it so that traffic, schools, infrastructure can be rebuilt and reorganized, then so be it. That's what we have to do.
Thank you. Mr. Shao.
Over here, we always have the joint liaison meeting between the city and the school board, and we were working on workforce housing for teachers. The problem is that with the salary of our teachers, they don't even qualify for affordable housing based on the definition of the city. So I propose that we have more moderate level income housing and senior housing. And by doing that, we can, first of all, increase the in lieu fees for developers so that we encourage them to build more moderate level housing. And we also increase the percentage of affordable housing in their plan. Also, when we decide what to approve for the development, we need to take into consideration of preservation of neighborhood characters like Niles. We need to avoid, high-rise, high-density development like Henkel project to destroy this beautiful town.
Thank you. Mr. Shah.
So I'm a millennial. Many of my high school classmates actually live at home. So I understand I understand firsthand the need for housing that's actually affordable to young people and to our seniors. By the end of 2017, the city had only produced approximately 17% of the city's RHNA target for very low income units, 27% of the city's RHNA for low income units, and 0% for moderate income units. Ultimately, we need to stop giving developers these handouts. If developers want to build, they need to pay more in impact fees, build more schools, more infrastructure, and housing that's actually affordable to Fremont residents, not these $1.5 million penthouses. Literally, they're called penthouses next to Warm Springs BART. Smart development that also, just no more half-baked solutions to supposedly address the need for affordable housing. I think it's time that our city government stops throwing Fremont residents who live here currently under the bus for some amorphous goal. That's my opinion on it.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler.
Sorry. I do agree we need more affordable housing. We do have a general plan that was put together by citizens in the community that needs to be followed. We should not be amending the general plan. If we're going to develop a new one, then let's go about developing a new one. We need to continue with the infill projects, but they need to fit the neighborhood. You can't stick a development in an infill project that is out of character with the neighborhood. I think we need an open and honest dialogue with the community and have the community understand that we're under some mandates, regional mandates, state mandates, and if we violate those mandates, we could be subject to a state law being changed, take further, authority away from the city as far as development. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watanuki?
Okay, the percentages have been discussed earlier. What really stood out to me was looking at the housing allocation that's required of every single city in this state under state law. There's been zero moderate income housing produced here in the city of Fremont. And in fact, did you know that 97% of the cities in our state have not met the allocation set that they have set under state law? I think that we need to address affordable housing, but that means going across all economic levels. The city can work with developers and not be subject to this by right penalty, if you will, by the state. If you don't produce that housing, the state will allow developers to develop whatever project they want as long as it conforms to the zoning for that land use, and we lose.
Thank you. Mr. Oropeza?
So housing is a very complex issue, and I don't think that there's an easy solution to fix it. We certainly have overdevelopment, and we also have a lack of affordable housing. In my opinion, I think that we need to force, or at least try to get a better sense for developers to actually build affordable units within each development. And then I think we need to abide by the general plan. I'm hesitant to think that a plan that took us 5 years to develop and come up with wasn't carefully thought out, where we have to actually amend it every single year. We should build a variety of different housing types where they're supposed to be built, but then we also shouldn't be amending the general amendment and building this high-density housing in the middle of existing communities where we're disrupting the character. It's certainly not an easy issue to deal with, but I think that by taking positive steps in the right direction, we can certainly make a positive impact on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saramdas?
Yeah, Fremont is a beautiful city and it's centrally located. Everybody wants to live in Fremont, and it's known for schools and education. So we need all levels of housing, from very low income, middle class, and upper middle class. We need to focus on smart growth, where growth is near the transit, near our priority. We need to work with the developers instead of blaming them. And also, I will be partner with everyone to accomplish more affordable housing. And I encourage more affordable housing. It's smart and planned growth, and promote transit and workforce housing. And also, we need more affordable housing for senior citizens, veterans, disability, firefighters, police, and teachers, so who can live in Fremont and,
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. So I think most of the people have addressed, some of the difficulties that we face, and there are some things that have fed into this. One of the issues of overdevelopment, overcrowding our schools is that 40 years ago, our student population was the same as it is today. However, we are now 11 school sites fewer than we were back then. And a lot of those sites, unfortunately, were sold to developers. That's before anybody's time on the council here or the school board or anything else. So what's past is past. But we have to work forward and try and resolve those issues. We are under mandates, as mentioned by Mr. Steckler and Mr. Bonacorsi, regarding what we have to provide by the state, as evidenced by this latest bill that Governor Brown signed regarding BART. BART is going to be allowed to build high-density housing without any local approval at all, where they really should be concentrating on their ridership and the security of their riders, for one. But that's going to be something that affects us going forward because they have the ability to buy and develop property within a half a mile.
Thank you. We're going to continue to explore this a little bit because there are an enormous amount of questions here about different aspects of housing. So I'm going to start with Mr. Dalton in District 4 now. And there is a question, and some of this may be a crossover with what you've already said. So again, I apologize for that, but I think these are really important questions. How will you demand better development that mitigates negative effects on existing residents and provides a better fit in our neighborhood? And can you also address the infrastructure that has not kept up with development? How do you plan to address that? And can you be specific with your answers on those?
Well, I think CEQA is a tool for that, most definitely. We need to use CEQA as a way to analyze developments regarding their impacts on existing neighborhoods, regarding their impacts on the larger city, and go from there. I mean, CEQA is a very powerful law that we can use to create that situation of oversight with developers. And I think in Niles, we've seen an example of how CEQA was used to express the impacts that the community saw happening to their environment. And we'll see if it's going to continue to work, but that is the tool I would rely on. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Shao?
I like to be specific about it. In the past, the school district have been working with developers to come up with solutions. For example, the Burnhurst Elementary School being built right now is one of the examples. Also, Robson, another developer, worked with the school district to build like a drop-off loop right next to Mission San Jose High School. These are all the examples that the city, the school district, and the developers can work together to mitigate the impact of the neighborhood. Also, let's talk about now again. Now elementary school is right now overcrowded with the whole kindergarten class overloaded to Gomes Elementary School. And if we try to introduce high density development into Niles, not only it will have an impact on the local area in terms of the environment, it will also cause overcrowdedness being worsened at Niles Elementary School, meaning more students being overloaded from Niles.
Thank you. Mr. Shah?
So talk is cheap, and as far as I know, 2 weeks ago at the HARB meeting, there were only two candidates from District 4 who actually had a person there or were there in person at the HARB meeting about the Henkel-Niles Gateway project, me and Mr. Dalton. And I want to share an anecdote about this specific thing because at the HARB meeting regarding the Henkel-Niles Gateway project, our city attorneys were so upset at HARB, they actually told them, your jurisdiction is architecture and conservation, not traffic. Long story short, Fremont doesn't work for us. Our citizens made the effort to come out and protest in a forum. Our city leaders should not be telling them that it's not the right forum. They should be telling residents how to use the correct procedural legal buzzwords, which in this case are architectural density and traffic impact. The entire point here is that we need the out of touch and bloated bureaucracy is something that we need to get rid of, and we need to move back in order to actually have change in Fremont. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. Mr. Steckler?
Yeah, can you just kind of encapsulate the question for me?
Sure, of course. How will you demand better development that mitigates negative effects on existing residents and provides a better fit in the neighborhoods? And the issue of infrastructure that has not kept up with development, how would you address those issues?
Okay, thank you. I don't think we can build our way out of the problem with infrastructure. I mean, widening roads, that kind of thing. I think the issue is that collaborative effort that Mr. Shang talked about, which is working with the city, the school district, and developers. And I think we should have the business community as part of that dialogue. As far as building a project in a neighborhood, it has to fit the character of the neighborhood. You can't put, a tin building up in wood structure buildings. So we need to work with the developers to bring forward projects that are going to be complement the neighborhood and more outreach to the neighbors. Had the developer in Niles listened to the community, they wouldn't have ended up in court. The community agrees something will be built there. It's just what, and that's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadanuki?
When it comes to housing, it really boils down to communication. People in the community, in the neighborhoods, have to have a voice and need to be heard, listened to, not just speaking, but actually being heard by city leadership. In looking at housing, planning for infrastructure, we need to talk to the developers about walkable neighborhoods, mixed use, pedestrian bicycle pathways, shuttles to get people to and from home and transit centers, incorporating open space and keeping open spaces in the design, open sight lines to the hills. These are all things that are applicable to the kinds of developments and even with the remodeling of homes in existing neighborhoods. Neighborhood cohesion is absolutely essential. And we also need to, I think, pursue public-private partnerships to deal with this as well.
Thank you. Mr. Oropeza?
So kind of going off of what Robert said, I think the CEQA process is a good starting point. It'll look at all the environmental impacts, and it'll also look at ways to mitigate those. And then in addition to that, we also have to expect our developers to actually have some type of contribution to the community. I understand that they're businessmen and they want to make a profit, and that's completely understandable, but there has to be an overall benefit to the greater good of the community. And so I think that is a very good driving point behind any type of negotiation. I think that, getting together in the community and having the community have some type of involvement, I think sometimes just being acknowledged is all we need. We can come to an agreement, but we have to have that open dialogue. And then as far as infrastructure, I think adjusting our impact fees for schools and trying to find additional sources of revenue. We're certainly not going to solve the entire issue, but I think that, there's a lot of things that we can look at to try to make a positive impact and continue to move forward as opposed to just having a negative outlook on things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sarandas?
We need to have housing near the transit, and we need to reduce urban sprawl where housing is very far away from transit. So we need to focus on smart growth and have density there. So we also need to add infrastructure by adding police officers, schools, and parks and roads. So we need to ask for more funding from county, state, and also federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. So I make it a point to meet with developers before their projects come before the council. And the first two questions I ask them are, number one, what do the neighbors think? Have you met with the neighborhood and gotten their buy-in on this project? Because if they don't like it, it's not going to get approved. And the second question is, what are you going to do for our schools? We're precluded by law from asking some of those questions regarding school issues during the council meeting, but there's nothing that says we can't negotiate or suggest things prior to them bringing it to council. So those are a couple of things that I always try and do to get the neighborhood buy-in and to see what projects you're going to do with the schools, such as the turnout on Mission Boulevard and some other issues that have been provided by some of the local developers. Some are better than others, quite frankly. But I think the communication is the key to work with them and to get them to buy into providing the right types of product that fit into the neighborhoods and improving the infrastructure. As far as our public safety, our fire department is fully staffed, our police department.
Thank you. Mr. Bonacorsi?
Mr. Shaw is right. Talk is cheap. I've led on the council on the issue of reducing second-story construction. I took a referral up that was passed in July to address the issue of overdevelopment in our neighborhoods. This is consistent with the leadership I've shown previously on the Planning Commission, where we made Mission Palms a designated neighborhood, which takes into account an element of our general plan, which is called community character, which preserves our neighborhoods, which are the backbone of our city. Mission Palms was ready to be sent to the side, jettisoned and not considered, but now it joins Glenmore and Mission Ranch as being areas that really preserve the neighborhood character. Finally, in terms of infrastructure, I would demand that the city pass an ordinance called a Transportation Demand Management Plan so that every developer that comes into Fremont has to pay its fair share for its impact on the infrastructure. This is a way that we can utilize the developer construction and the monies generated from that effort to fully fund infrastructure.
Thank you. We may come back to the housing, but let's move on to something else for right now. One of the more burning questions are, what are the winning lottery numbers? Okay, there is a lot of questions regarding districts, and because this is a new territory for Fremont, obviously. So the questions are, if you're elected, how will you serve the city and your district at the same time, not play favorites within your district? And how will you choose to engage with the associations or the organizations representing that district? And I'm going to start with Mr. Shaw on that one.
So for me, district system is a good way to ensure that our representatives are held accountable. I went to Chadbourne. I currently live in Morrison Canyon. So Chadbourne's in the Mission area and Morrison Canyon is in the Washington High School area. I believe that I am a candidate who actually is accessible by all communities, all age demographics, regardless of, ethnic group. Because right now, I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of people are on Nextdoor, but some communities are in WeChat, some communities are on WhatsApp, some communities, my younger generation community is on Instagram. Okay, so it's good to have representatives who think about everyone within the district, not just Niles, not just Mission, but everyone, but also everyone in Fremont, because at the end of the day, we are a global, diverse, and beautiful city. And I think that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler?
Thank you. I think that, being retired, I have more time on my hands now, but you have to work for your district. You have to advocate for your district as, in a district form of governance. What you have to be careful of is building the silos that prevent you from collaborating and compromising with other council members. So, I think I have a good record of collaboration in my work. I would say that I would hold regular community meetings to find out what the issues are in my district and get feedback from the citizens in my district. But as Mr. Shaw said, I have said this from the beginning. At the end of the day, when I vote, the vote is for the city of Fremont, because that's where we live, is the city of Fremont. I'll advocate for my district and I'll work for my district, but at the end of the day, the vote is for the city of Fremont. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watanuki?
I would definitely, and as I've been walking and knocking on doors, maybe I've done that to some of you, I really enjoy talking to the people that live in District 4, whether it's in Niles or all the way up through the portion of Mission San Jose. People really just want to know. They have questions, they have thoughts, they have ideas, and what seems to be lacking is that basic communication. So I want to have regular quarterly meetings in the neighborhoods throughout District 4. In addition to that, people's schedules are varied, to have an email group to send information out, get questions, and deal with that as well. I think reporting back and communication is key. I served on the Fremont Education Foundation board, and as a president, equity was huge there, and the same principles and practices can be utilized serving on city council as well.
Thank you. Mr. Oropeza?
So that's an excellent question. So thank you to whoever asked that. I think that's one of the biggest concerns that people have, that you're only going to focus on your district and you're going to create the silo effect. It's unfortunate that Teresa isn't here, because I think that's been part of her message. So kind of going along the lines of what Craig said, I will always advocate for my district and I will always look for their best interests. But at the end of the day, it's what's best for the city. We have to maximize all the revenue that we have. We have to make the best decisions that will have the biggest positive impact on the overall community. And so I like the fact that we went to a district-based election system because it gives you that intimate connection with the residents. You're able to get to know them on a personal level, and you're able to find some of the minor issues. We all know about the big traffic, overdevelopment, overcrowded schools, but we also need to focus on some of the smaller issues that could possibly be dealt at without even the need for additional revenue. And so I think it's a fantastic question once again, and I think it's a good way to have that one-on-one connection with the residents and actually feel like your voice matters.
Thank you. Mr. Ramdas?
Yes. Yes, I support district-wise elections because, Fremont has a population, 233,000, 136 people are there, and it's a huge city, second largest city in Alameda County. And the District 1 has about 39 to 40,000 people living in District 1. So since we have about 40,000 people, it's very easy to find the issues, and also, but we will address, collectively with my, fellow council members, and I will work very closely and also with the business community and neighborhood associations. And my idea is like Fremont is first, and my idea is like appeasement of none and justice for all. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you. So while this district issue was kind of thrust upon us, and I thought it actually should have been left up to our residents to make that decision, I think it will work out to be a good thing. Currently, if you have an issue that you want the council to address, it's kind of the shotgun approach, and you email all 5 council members, which makes it a little bit problematic in violating the Brown Act if more than 2 of us respond. So I think that point of contact for a district is going to be an ideal situation for residents in the district to be able to say, this is who I have to go to. Although I do caution them that I'm not inheriting a crown. I'm not going to be in charge of that district. And whatever goes on in there, at the end of the day, as everybody else has said, it is what is best for Fremont and the rest of our residents. But I think it's going to be a great thing to have that point of contact and that individual representation.
Thank you. Mr. Bonacorsi?
District 3 is the downtown district. So what is good for downtown is good for the city of Fremont. What is good for the city of Fremont is good for the downtown. So I don't see a schism or a difference between the two. I'm also a city guy. I grew up here. I want to see the city succeed. And when we have our friends here from fire and police, they're going to have to respond to an emergency wherever it occurs. We also had the case of the Carmageddon when we had the sinkhole over at 680 on February 28th, 2017. That stopped traffic throughout the entire city. So we're very, very much connected. Again, I've already acted as a community as a District 3 representative. I met with residents on Monterey Way. They had an issue with the Fremont hub with some toxic discharge that created a compressor that was keeping them up at night. So I worked with Alameda County Water District, our city staff, and the residents, and now it is very quiet and they can sleep on Monterey Way. That's what being a district representative is acting, listening to the concerns of the residents, and having solutions.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton?
I think the 5 historic districts each have their own character, and they should retain their own character. I think there's a beauty to that. There's a sensibility to that. I think even on this panel, we can see certain people fit into certain districts as characteristic of those districts. I'm a Niles guy, okay? The Niles district used to be called the Niles district. Now it's also shares part of it with the Mission district. But we need to create a synergy that makes us all citizens of Fremont. And I honestly believe that the development of the downtown is a big part of that, as it can pull threads from every district, each historical district. If they can retain their character and be developed on their own and come together in the downtown with the proper guidance, then that's the way to make everyone here Fremont citizens rather than district citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Shao?
I use my experience on the school board example. Running a school district is like sitting on a city council. You have to take not only where you're from into consideration, but also look at the whole city. for example, in school district, we have 5 attending areas, and even though I'm from Mission, I have to just not only look at Mission, but also the whole school district. I hold on to 2 words. One is engagement. The other one is equity. Engagement for Mission San Jose High School swimming pool project. I really engaged all the community members, try to listen to them, and then try to advocate for them, and eventually the swimming pool project passed. For equity, I also look at the need of the American attending area. For example, I recently voted for the Thornton expansion project. I also voted for the Washington High School new science building and such. So I take the whole district
Thank
into
you.
consideration.
Thank you. We're going to focus now on business in Fremont, and we're going to start with Ms. Watanuki on this one. So there is an interest in moving more high-tech companies to Fremont. Can you discuss whether you have plans to do that? What types of industries are you interested in having develop or come to Fremont to be here? Would you be supportive of offering incentives to new organizations or new businesses? And would you be in support of offering those same incentives to keep local established businesses here?
I apologize. I didn't hear the first part of the question because I thought you were going to go with Mr. Steckler first, but that's okay.
I can repeat it. Okay.
Just that, yes.
So there's
please.
a general interest in knowing whether you are interested in having more high-tech companies move into Fremont. Do you have plans to address that? And what other industries do you think would be a good fit for Fremont? And additionally, there's questions around incentives. Would you offer incentives to businesses moving into Fremont? And would you offer incentives to businesses that are established already in Fremont?
Yes, I would welcome businesses, whether they are in high tech or other areas. We need to have a revenue generating stream. Business taxes is a huge part of the revenue that comes into the city. With that said, I think I really want to be mindful of the existing businesses, whether they are large, medium, or small. We've been talking about the character of neighborhoods and the character of the different districts within Fremont. Local businesses are a huge part of that. I mean, the Cloverleaf Bowl is a shining example. And so we need to be able to provide protections and support for all businesses. I would want to incentivize businesses, especially if they're large ones, do something about the traffic, congestion, transportation, and housing.
Thank you. Mr. Oropeza.
I would certainly welcome new businesses. I think we're lucky that we have a high employment rate. So I would welcome the tech industry, but I also want to be cautious about that because our infrastructure is already being taxed, it's already being overburdened. And so I would want to see, possibly some incentives, but I would also want to see them contribute at some point, right? We have Tesla, which offers a lot of employment, but have they actually offered anything to the community? And so we can't continue to have these industries come in and not benefit the overall community. And then in addition, I would like to see more retail. We don't have a lot of retail. We don't have a lot of recreational areas. And so I would like to see a lot more of that type of business come in and provide more of a friendly environment for the community, to give the community a place to go, places to eat, to be able to enjoy all of life and not just work and commutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saramdas.
My husband is a senior executive in software company, so I would support, technology companies to come into Fremont. So I would suggest it would be great in Warm Springs BOT station if you can bring those companies into that area, it would be really great. And also, technology companies as well as manufacturing companies too. But again, I support the incentives, but I don't want to give away the money because it's for a short period of time is okay to sustainability of the companies, but later we can start again charging the fees and the charges and the taxes on the technology companies.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. So we actually have two areas now that we are focusing on. One is the Warm Springs Innovation District, where we're currently recruiting green tech, biotech, and clean energy businesses, as well as some light manufacturing and R&D. Hopeful that we'll create a number of new jobs there, along with the housing that's going in there, as well as the brand new elementary school that's being built. Our economic development department does a great job, basically, I hate to put it this way, but of stealing companies from other cities. We've moved Tesla headquarters here. We've got Facebook here. We brought Gen Z here from Palo Alto, and all of those companies, except as Tesla, as mentioned by Mr. Oropeza, contribute back to the city. And we're going to look to do as much as we can to leverage their position here to get as much as we can for the city of Fremont in the form of infrastructure and what contribution they're going to make to community projects around the city. Tesla, we're looking at we've been trying to work on a public-private partnership. So far, no result.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones, for answering the first minute of my response. So I adopt everything you just said. I'll focus a little bit more on another aspect, Ardenwood Business Park, where we had forward-thinking leadership in the city, where we changed the floor-to-area ratio for the buildings out there to have more modern Class A style R&D spaces. What happened? We got Tesla coming over from Palo Alto. We got Facebook coming in, and that is a real boon to our economy. Christina Briggs is now our Economic Development Director. She's shown real leadership and has worked well with the Fremont Chamber, and she follows in the great tradition of Kelly Klein, working in attracting high tech. Absolutely attract high tech. That's what Warm Springs, South Fremont's about, Ardenwood Business Park. But to follow up on Ms. Watanuki, we could look at Cloverleaf and have what's called a legacy business ordinance that's in San Francisco County, which preserves our historic businesses, creates incentives for them to be able to stay and not be at the whim of a landlord, create incentives for them to be able to remain as tenants. So that's something about preserving our past while we look to the future.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton.
I believe, a tech influx into Fremont is unavoidable. It's happening. It's going to continue happening. It's a privilege to have your company in our city. It's got the greatest environment. It's got great people. They've all got great resumes. We have a town full of, as far as I can tell, geniuses and engineers here to draw from in the occupational pool. So we need to steward those qualities. Our city should be tasked to take care of the equity that businesses get when they move into our city. And we need to steward our small businesses and encourage small businesses and entrepreneurship, maybe with crowdfunding or startup funds for smaller businesses to maintain their presence in our city as well, including art, culture, and the type of businesses that we like in my part of the district.
Thank you, Mr. Shao.
Business tax is the fastest growing revenue to the city of Fremont, so we need to attract new businesses while preserving the current business. As for the high tech, of course, I'm in the biopharmaceutical industry, and I sense that the biopharmaceutical industry is for the future. People are living longer and longer, but people are getting sick. So we need more of that. Now we have Boehringer Ingelheim already in Fremont. We need more such biotech industry or biopharmaceutical industry in Fremont in the future. As for the incentives, I believe that we have the great performing school district. And with that, the employees can get their kids well educated here, and also the local schools, together with Alumni College, can provide high quality workforce for those businesses, and that's the biggest incentive, I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Shah.
So we have a $205 million general fund right now. The most basic purpose of attracting business to Fremont is to increase this fund so as we can provide better and higher quality services to Fremont residents. So with that out of the way, with regard to the specific question, I believe we should offer incentives. However, only if the businesses add a net positive value add to our own city. And yes, business incentives are important, but like development, we should not be doing it at the expense of current Fremont residents. We need to prioritize our quality of life. Also, I think we all need to remember that it is a privilege for these companies to come to Fremont, not the other way around. We should leverage, and we can leverage, our diversity to Taipei, Mumbai, the world. And we can do this by supporting businesses of all sizes, both small and large, and growing Fremont growing Fremont in a way that's great. And let's also not forget that we need the infrastructure to do this. So yes, attracting businesses is great, but we need a comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler.
Thank you. The idea of incentives for businesses to locate in Fremont is a slippery slope, and that can be it can be very difficult in the future. So I am not a supporter of economic incentives to bring industry here. As the other candidates pointed out, it's a privilege to come to Fremont. We have a well-educated workforce here. We have a safe community to live in. We have great amenities for people. So my view is we don't need to do economic incentives. I do believe that we need to balance our businesses between high-tech, genetic research, that type of industry, along with our service industry and manufacturing. We have to have a balance in that. I remember going through the high-tech wreck in 2002, and it was particularly difficult for Fremont. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to start with Mr. Oropeza. In 2016, the governor signed a bill that mandated the minimum wage reach $15 by the year 2022. Recently, there was a referral by a city council member to accelerate the implementation of the minimum wage. Do you support a minimum wage of $15 an hour? And do you support the acceleration of that minimum wage scale for the city of Fremont? Why or why not?
I would support the minimum wage increase and the acceleration of it. It's difficult to say a definitive yes without knowing the actual scale or at what level it's going to increase to 15 over what time period. But I do think it's important. We have people of all income levels and people that don't have these high-tech paying jobs. And people, they need to be able to afford to live here. The average rental cost for a one-unit apartment is $2,200. And you figure if someone's making minimum wage, they're making $20,800 before taxes or any deductions. And so that's not even enough to cover the basic necessities. And so I think that we need to provide the people that live in our community the ability to be able to live a basic life and have the basic necessities. I understand that some of our small businesses may have some concern with that, but I think that there's ways that perhaps we could leverage that, find additional revenue sources from other sources to try to kind of offset that. But I think that the majority of the small businesses, or the majority of the typical jobs, lower wage jobs, are actually already paying $12.50 or above.
Thank you. Ms. Saramdas.
Yes, I do support minimum wages, but we have to increase gradually, not all of a sudden. If you can increase all of a sudden, like $12 to $13 to $15, that's when it starts, like it's going to be a big impact on the business people also. So we have to balance this, we need to, at the same time, I support increasing the minimum wages. And I understand, Fremont living cost is too high, and a lot of workforce, they are living very far away. Because of that, traffic issue is also going up and up. But again, we have to balance because, we need to think about business people too. We cannot have a big impact on them all of a sudden. So,
thank you. Mr. Jones.
Well, this is a little bit difficult. This referral was brought to us. It's currently being studied by staff, and it's going to come back to council. And being that there are 3 council members in the room, I don't want to violate the Brown Act and discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Bonacorsi,
I can have the same answer as well because of the Brown Act. We can't be deliberating here in advance. If I said yes and Rick said yes and Raj says me too, that violates the Brown Act. So we can't say yes or no in this setting. Oh, Raj is stepping out. Thanks, Raj. Wait for 1 minute. I think he might hear what our answers are.
That's so funny. Okay.
No, bye, Raj. No, but seriously, there are. I want to hear from all the stakeholders. I know that the chamber had an outreach. I thought it was. I can talk about the last council meeting where the Human Relations Commission actually was very cautious about raising the minimum wage, which I said, which Human Relations Commission's ever against a minimum wage? But they raised some interesting issues. I do believe. Well, I can't. I did talk about some of the aspects of the resolution that was introduced, but I don't want to presage or foreshadow what my views are because I want to hear everybody's input, and we'll make a decision, I think, in mid-November, irrespective of the results of the election. It's going to come up in November after November 6th, so I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton?
So Fremont's a very expensive place to live. Fremont should lead the way on the issue of minimum wage. Head for $20 as soon as you can, as quick as you can. Minimum wage is the low end of the housing crisis. You need to pay people more in order to get them into affordable housing that exists at their pay scale. Once we allow people to make more money who are working at the lower end of the economic scale, they'll be able to live closer to Fremont or in Fremont. That solves your traffic problem. That helps your affordable housing problem. There's never been a situation where wages going up has damaged an economy. I think it's a very safe bet to say that reaching $20 as quickly as possible is what we need to do.
Mr. Shao?
This is a very interesting issue because we were just talking about attracting high-tech business into Fremont. So for those large employers, minimum wage is not an issue. However, for local small businesses, especially all the mom and pop stores in Niles, that's going to be a huge impact. So we need to look into the situation and find out exactly how many of the existing small businesses owners are paying the minimum wage. Look at it. Even if we increase it to $15 or $20 today, it's still not a living wage in Fremont. Actually, 49% of the residents want to move out of Bay Area because of the high living expense here. So as I said, we need to engage the local community and really find out what they're facing in terms of the challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Shah?
So I'm a millennial, and this impacts a lot of Fremont residents, especially I would say my younger generation. Many of my neighbors are moving to Portland. So I think also maybe we can do a thought exercise, and people watching at home or in the audience, how could you live on a minimum wage of $15 an hour? How much would you need to live? So that being said, I do agree that it can't just be all of a sudden boom, boom, boom. However, on a related note, to tie this back into the previous question about business incentives, it's not so much about the number of employees that you have. I think we need to look at the profit margins and the revenues and the types of businesses who can afford this kind of thing. Because I understand we need to listen to everyone, the small mom and pop shops, of course, but how many really could not afford to pay employees a better living wage? And I also, as a final note, data will inform this, so it's very simple. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler?
Thank you. I'd want to know what the impact will be on small, medium-sized businesses, both in the service industry and brick and mortar sales. I know, being a small business owner when I was one, that kind of rate would have made it more difficult for us. I'd also want to make sure that what we're putting forward as a council is not just symbolic. I agree with the other candidates. You're not going to have much of an impact on an economic ability of somebody moving them up to $15 or even $20 an hour, and based on the cost of living in Fremont, they still wouldn't be able to afford an apartment. So I don't want to do it if it's strictly symbolic. And the state's going to push through on it anyway, so we might as well get ourselves ready for it. But I'd really want to know what the impact is going to be on small business, medium business, and service and brick and mortar. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Watanuki?
Yes, I do support increasing the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. Whether it should be accelerated, I think for larger businesses, that yes, they can absorb it, but we need to be very sensitive to the smaller businesses and to get their input on how it would impact their businesses. As was stated, the state of California is going to increase the minimum wage on a longer time frame, but the businesses throughout our city are going to have to address that. And so by engaging into dialogues now, I think the Chamber of Commerce might have been involved in a survey of local businesses to get input on just this issue, and that is a good starting point, but we've got to do something with that information and really be supportive and sensitive to not just the businesses, but the employees as well.
Thank you. We're going to start this question with Mr. Jones, and it is regarding the Climate Action Plan and going green and reducing Fremont's carbon footprint. And one of our audience members feels that, first of all, they state they're very proud of the Climate Action Plan, but feel it doesn't go far enough on this singularly important issue. So the question is, do you support a dramatic increase in climate action with the council in the lead? And then to add to that, small businesses greatly affected by some of these things, some of the demands of changing or a dramatic increase in climate action. So what would you see as being a method to offset some of those costs and requirements without adversely affecting small business?
That's more than a compound question.
So I have so many. I'm just trying to boil this all down and get everything answered.
So we've actually done a lot over the last several years to make the city more green. We've had green challenges. We've required solar on all of the new developments. We've required electric vehicle chargers on all of the new developments. Just a week or so ago, we supported divesting from fossil fuels and are sending letters to, Fremont doesn't have any investment directly, but we're sending letters to our retirement system that does, to get them to divest from it. We've introduced solar panels at our police department, our maintenance yard, and a number of other places to reduce our footprint. And there's a lot that we can do, but as you mentioned, we do have to be very careful with how we require the businesses to conform to some of these new guidelines. They're going to get a lot more strict because the state just passed a guideline that we're going to be, a zero net by 2050. So it's going to be difficult to incorporate, and hopefully we're going to be able to get some money to help our small businesses make those changes because they can't afford to do it themselves.
Thank you. Mr.
Excellent answer, Councilmember Jones. I'll add on to that. I was on the Planning Commission when we recommended the Climate Action Plan back in 2012, which reduces greenhouse gases by 25% over the 2005 baseline. We just had an update last week from Rachel DeFranco, who's our sustainability coordinator, that our participation in something called East Bay Community Energy, with Brilliant Choice and Bright Choice of having a renewable source of locally produced energy, is going to help us achieve those goals in a way that we didn't think we might have done. So we should be participating fully in that. Our city has adopted the Brilliant Choice, which again is based on renewable and carbon-free energy sources. We're going to continue to take the lead. I'm proud to serve on the East Bay Community Energy as a representative of the city, and I will personally take the lead in leading us forward on climate action. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton.
I think Fremont has done very well in terms of their greening of the city. I think you guys have done a good job. I would say that as we search for negotiation points with developers in Fremont, that no new development without getting as close as possible to full renewable energy is a great negotiating point to take on with those people, even down to the granular level of individual houses. You want to build a new house, it's got to be, you want to do a tear down and build your larger house on your lot. We can discourage that kind of behavior and encourage green activity by requiring a certain amount of renewable energy to come at the expense of every single homeowner in this town that builds a new house.
Thank you. Mr. Shao?
I would say let the student lead the way, because I sense that this is an awareness problem. Because we know that over the years, students have been working with the city of Fremont in the summer to go out and reach out to all the small businesses and try to help them install LED, like energy serving light bulbs, and try to help them use less electricity. And we have this competition every year, and one school, high school student team would win out. And not only that, district-wide, we just approved the plan to look into more solar panel on our campuses. And so I think starting with the new generation is certainly an approach that we need to take. Also, we need to ask the new development to have a minimum requirement of green energy technology incorporated into their plan, so that we make sure that the new generation of houses will all be green.
Thank you. Mr. Shah?
So for the original question, I do not support dramatic action of any kind of decision unless it's informed, fair, and sensible. I like things like solar, eco-terracing, EV. I think overall we need to take care of our environment because we are stewards of this earth. So in general, I agree. But in principle, and also from a fiscal perspective, we really need to be cognizant of how we budget, how we prioritize, because at the end of the day, this is one issue. But there are other issues. And I've said this already, my number one issue is traffic congestion. And also, in terms of any kind of action, we need to make sure that it's not symbolic. For example, the Santa Barbara City Council, I believe, or Santa Cruz, they criminalize, giving out plastic straws or something and like a hefty fine. And stuff like that is very ridiculous. And it's not something I would support. And also, we need to be cognizant of who the really big polluters are in this world. And I think we need to look to China, look to India, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steckler?
Thank you. I think the city's done a good job so far as being green. I'd like to take credit for the solar panels over the police parking lot, but that happened on Rich Lucero's watch, although it was discussed on my watch. I think, I would like to look at some kind of ordinance that at the sale of a house that it then go to solar. I mean, I have solar. It's easy, not that expensive in the long run. I'd like to look at some kind of ordinance that at the point of sale. I mean, we do that with fire alarms and carbon monoxide alarms and other requirements that the city puts on when there's a property transfer. So I would like to look at something like that. I do want to say that leaders often get criticized because they're out front, and I don't see anything wrong with the city being out front when it comes to being green. I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watanuki?
In looking at the general plan and the climate action plan, that element, it is very well written, and I think the goals are more than commendable, and the city has done a good job. of implementing that. The question, I believe, though, was really focused on small businesses and the impact of going green. The small businesses are really, really being taxed heavily with these requirements. I understand that. But I think that the city can do things to assist the small business owners, to help them meet the goals and the objectives of the plan. We do that for other members of our community, and what it will take is getting the small business owners in, talking with city leadership and city staff to find ways that we can work together and achieve the goals for the betterment of all.
Thank you, Mr. Oropeza.
So I think the city's done a great job in going green. I think they've done a lot of positive things. All the new homes that are being built are solar ready. And so I think that we're headed in the right direction. And I think that we're on a good pace to get there. I am a little concerned for the small businesses. I know that even putting solar aside, anytime you go and make improvements, sometimes you pass a certain threshold and then you're required to bring everything up to code. And so that can be a significant cost. That can be a cost that far exceeds the actual improvements that you're making. So I would have to take a look at how this is being implemented. I mean, I think it's in the right direction and it's something positive, but I am a little leery of how it will impact small businesses and whether that's even feasible for them. In general, I think that the city has done a tremendous job. I would like to see a couple more EV stations on the northern side of Fremont. I think they're located more on the southern end of Fremont, and that just may be a timing issue, but they've done an excellent job.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Sarandas.
I think, Fremont did a great job. It's ranked 7th best nationally for environment. And we need to promote solar panels and electric cars to avoid the pollution. And I support the climate action plan to reduce the carbon dioxide by 25%. And we need to face these regulations in and do outreach to businesses, especially small businesses. And most importantly, it's to reduce the single car trips and promote the public transportation so that we can reduce the pollution. And I support more solar panels and electric cars.
Great, thank you. So we are just about out of time, and we're going to do one last question, and we're going to give you 30 seconds to respond. And it's going to be your closing statement, so to speak. But before I do that, I just wanted to, we've got a huge number of questions here, and a lot of them are repeats. So just so you as candidates know what is on the minds of the voters, I just wanted to put a couple of these in front of you. I'm not asking you to answer them. I just want you to know what people are thinking. About the wage follow-up, how many of you had to have ever make a payroll or run a business where costs have affected you, and would that affect your decision? Do you accept money from developers? That came up several times. What is your position with regard to people related by blood or marriage serving on city council at the same time? What about the Brown Act? That's come up a number of times. The city working in concert with the school district, that's a big question as well. And questions about minority-owned businesses in Fremont, and several questions for the Niles Gateway project. So that's obviously on the minds of many people for the candidates who are in District 4. So with that, I'm going to ask the one last question where you have 30 seconds as part of your closing statement, because it is a closing statement question. We are going to start with Mr. Dalton. Why don't we start with you? The question is, what experience makes you feel qualified to be on city council? 30 seconds, please.
My experience in marshaling my community together to fight for better development in Niles, I think has tuned me to the workings of city council, to the planning commission, and most of all to the hearts and minds of my people of Fremont. We gathered together under the banner of trying to make our community better. And so far we've succeeded in our small way. And with your help and with the help of my community, we're going to continue to succeed. Be at the Planning Commission October 25th.
Mr. Shao, 30 seconds.
4 years ago, Fremont gave me the honor of serving our community as board member of FUSD. As president of the board, we spent your tax dollars wisely to overcome school overcrowdedness while improving student test scores and campus safety. I also serve on the liaison committee between the city and the school district, providing service solutions that benefit all of Fremont. So my proven leadership and my experience has been recognized. I received the Community Hero Award, and also I was endorsed by leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw?
So District 4 is comprised of my community, my neighbors, my family and friends, my home. I've lived here my entire life. I'm sad to see all the irresponsible development, and I have a lot of ideas and solutions like IoT technologies to synchronize our stoplights. I have zero relationship to special interests or to Fremont's existing political elite, and I just ask that maybe we give the younger generation the chance and the opportunity to make a difference. At the end of the day, I know two people will always agree 100% of the time, but
Thank you,
I'll always
Mr.
listen.
Steckler.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think overall, I believe I'm the candidate with the most amount of experience with local government, for starters. I have a reputation for collaboration and involving the community, especially while I was the chief of police. I have the life experience to know that you can't get everything you want at once, that it takes the ability to negotiate, to compromise, to collaborate, work together, and you may eventually get to the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steckler. Ms. Watanuki?
I'm past chair of the Human Relations Commission, current Life Elder Care Board member, past president of the Fremont Education Foundation, a founder and president of my own nonprofit. I built my own business. I'm a single parent of a young man, of whom I'm very proud. I get my strength and independence from my father, who served with the 442nd Nisei soldiers in World War II while our families were imprisoned in internment camps. I also get it from my mother, who was a community activist who advocated for better education for all. And she organized a grassroots campaign to elect the first woman and a woman of color.
Mr. Oropeza?
So over the last 7 years, I have worked for 2 public agencies, and I know how local government works. And so I think that the most important thing about my campaign and about myself as an individual is that I'm honest and transparent and accountable. And I think that's the type of candidate people want. People want to be able to elect someone that they can relate to, someone who's going to be honest, someone who's going to give you direct answers and not dance around the issues. As to the question about funding, I do not take any developer contributions, a political action committee money, or any special interest money. My only concern and my only objective for this is to be able to truly represent the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saramdis?
Yes. I want to maintain the transparency and accountability, and I don't take any money from the developers. And since I have been living in Fremont for the last 20 years and serving for various nonprofits for the last 15 years, I do have an experience in raising thousands of dollars for the charity. And as a business person, and my strength is like hard work, honesty, and dedication, and I can be decisive, determined, and dependable leader for council member.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
So I've experienced city government from both sides, both as an employee and now as a council member, formerly as a planning commissioner. I also worked in one of our local high schools for 9 years, is a school resource officer, and was a teacher for 14 years at the adult school. So I kind of see a little bit of all of the issues that are involved with Fremont. I've developed a lot of relationships with our local leaders. I'm proud to be supported by our mayor, the senator, both Congress members, both assembly members, both county supervisors, and what that means is that the relationships that I have can carry me forward for.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Bonacorsi?
Thank you. The reason I would respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th is that I have a track record of achievement. In addition to leading on Cloverleaf Bowl, in addition to reducing second-story construction, one of my first referrals on council was to have our Sustainability Commission have somebody from the school district, so our partnerships between our schools and city could forge ahead on climate action. To answer the concerns of the community, no, I don't think it's a good idea for a husband and wife to be serving on the council. We need 7 independent people that can make judgments for the best interest of the city of Fremont.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to thank our candidates one more time. Thank you so much for your time and your patience in helping to educate the voters out there. And just to be clear, all candidates that are registered to run were asked to be here. Some chose or were unavailable, chose not to participate, or were unavailable. So we do appreciate your time and that you spent with us this evening. And